In 1985, 8 years after forming, Simple Minds finally broke the American market with their song Don't You Forget About Me. It reached #1 in the US and Canada and the top 10 in several countries around the world. It launched the band to new heights of success, but funnily enough, Simple Minds turned down the song several times before agreeing to do it. The song was offered to some other artists too, apparently. It's hard to imagine that song being done by any other band, right? So let's go through the full story of the song, and if you love music history like me, make sure to subscribe and join our pack. Let's go back to 1984. Simple Minds were recording their 7th studio album, Once Upon a Time. By then, the band had had moderate success, but were by no means household names. Love Song, released in 1981, had reached 47 in the UK charts and became a top 20 hit in Australia and Sweden. Their album, Suns and Fascinations, reached number 11 in the same year too. Their first proper chart hit in the UK would come 2 years later with Promised You a Miracle. It reached number 13 in 1982 and stayed in the charts for 11 weeks. In 84, their 6th album, Sparkle in the Rain, would prove to be their commercial breakthrough success. It reached number 1 in the UK and the top 20 in 8 other countries. The album marked a bit of a shift for the group into more powerful stadium rock sounds. It moved away from the atmospheric synth-driven style of their earlier albums. Now, the success of Sparkle in the Rain came off the back of a special guest appearance at U2's Dublin show in August 1983. So by 1984, the band were certainly on the up and were looking to carry on that momentum. While Sparkle in the Rain performed exceedingly well in Europe, it only reached 64 in the US, so they were still hunting for that breakthrough in the American market. And that very breakthrough would be handed to them on a sparkling silver platter by a man named Keith Forsey. Like an angel floating down from music industry heaven, Keith came to vocalist Jim Kerr and guitarist Charlie Burchill and said, "Lads, this song is a surefire hit. This is your ticket to breaking the American market. This is how you take your career to the next level. Much fame and riches are in your future." And they said, "Nah, you're all right, jog on." Some context then. In 1983, producer Keith Forsey was like gold dust to movie soundtracks. He co-wrote Flashdance, What a Feeling, alongside Giorgio Moroder and Irene Cara, who performed the track for movie Flashdance. That song went on to win an Academy Award in 1984, and this success paved the way for Forsey to co-write songs featured in the soundtracks of Ghostbusters, Beverly Hills Cop, The Never-Ending Story, and The Breakfast Club, directed by John Hughes. If you've not seen The Breakfast Club before, it's basically about 5 high school stereotypes who walk into detention, spend the day arguing, bonding and dancing, then leave, realising they're more than their labels, capped off with an iconic fist pump. Don't. Brilliant. What we're interested in though is the song written by Forsey and Steve Schiff for the movie, Don't You Forget About Me. Forsey had written this song with Simple Minds in, well, mind. It also helped that the director of the movie, John Hughes, was a massive fan of Simple Minds too. He was a big fan of British pop at the time in general, the likes of Echo and the Bunnymen, The Teardrop Explodes, OMD, and so on. Forsey had recorded a rough demo of the song that Jim Kerr later described as sounding like a dodgy Psychedelic Furs B-side. This demo was sent to Simple Minds by the Hollywood executives working on the film, and it got lost. It somehow ended up in the jacket pocket of the band's keyboard player, Mick McNeil, for 3 months, so not a good start. Forsey then appeared in person in the band's dressing room after a gig in America, with the song, and the band turned it down. They actually turned it down 5 or 6 times, according to Jim Kerr. They were working on their own album at the time, and were sure they'd be just fine without Don't You Forget About Me. We do our own songs. We didn't fancy it at all. We didn't fancy the premise of the movie. It wasn't exactly The Godfather. We thought, no big deal. And we knocked it back about 5 or 6 times. And that's a good point, to be fair. The Breakfast Club is a coming-of-age movie about American high school students in detention, not exactly the experience a band from Glasgow would be able to connect to. Forsey then approached 2 other artists with the song, Brian Ferry, who declined, and Billy Idol, who accepted. Sorry, no, wait, he declined as well. My bad. By the way, jokes aside, Jim Kerr and Charlie Burchill were never convinced that Brian Ferry and Billy Idol were ever approached. See, the movie soundtrack was being released by A&M Records in the US, the same label that looked after Simple Minds, and not Ferry or Idol. And it would make sense to ask a band under the same label to record the song, right? Maybe that rumour was started as a ploy to convince Simple Minds to actually do it. Determined to get Simple Minds on board, Forsey devised a sneaky plan. He phoned Jim and said, "Look, I know you're not going to record the song, and of course I'm disappointed, but I'd love to work with you guys in the future at some point. I'm coming over to London soon. Can I come and see you?" Now, Jim and the band were impressed with the work he had produced at that point. I mean, he produced Billy Idol's first 2 albums, after all. Now, Keith was with the band for 3 days, and the band loved Keith's enthusiasm. They would go drinking together, and by the 3rd day, they were basically all best mates. And on that last day, Keith pushed one more time. "Why don't you just do this track? It'll get the record company off your back. If it's rubbish, and you've got nothing to lose. And if it's good, who knows?" And by this time, a couple of guys in the band said, "You know, I don't think the track's that bad. We never thought it was bad, we just didn't like the idea of doing someone else's stuff." So Simple Minds finally gave in and said, "Fine, let's book a studio for an afternoon." So they did, in Wembley. The band really went to town on it too, hoping to produce something that everyone would think didn't work, and that would be the story finished. They could finally get Keith off their backs. Charlie Burchill, fresh off the band's foray into a more stadium rock sound, ramped up the intro with massive AOR-type power chords, almost as a caricature. Jim Kerr, almost in protest of the fact he hadn't written any lyrics himself, spouted "la la la la" at the end. And they went in hoping to prove that this song didn't work for Simple Minds. But it did work. Really bloody well. By the end of the afternoon, we knew that, oh god, we're in trouble here. Because this is the kind of thing that the record company's going to love. Radio will probably like. MTV, which had emerged, perfect for. So they finally recorded Don't You Forget About Me, and then ironically, they forgot about it. I mean, they had no idea that this song would be used as the main song in the film. In fact, the band were offered a songwriting credit because of how much they had transformed that original demo, but they declined. What a mistake that was. The film was released 3 months later and grossed $51 million, and pushed Simple Minds to the top of the US Billboard charts and high chart rankings in many countries across the world. The success also led to their appearance at Live Aid in 1985, pushing their profile even further. But did this success come at a cost? The success of that song/movie fast-tracked Simple Minds onto a level of success that may or may not already have been coming our way. But it also alienated some of our until then loyal followers, who had perceived Simple Minds as a cool Euro thing only, and certainly not something to be splattered all over MTV. They were of course entitled to their opinion. It is not my favourite Minds track either, but I don't have one to begin with. Don't You Forget About Me would also pave the way for the success of their follow-up single, Alive and Kicking, which reached number 2 in the US. In the same year, Bryan Adams had his American breakthrough as well with Summer of '69. That song has a fascinating story behind it. It turns out no one really knows what the song is even about, including the 2 blokes who wrote it. I've made an entire video about Summer of '69, click over there to watch it next.